G'day chaps, 'tis I, Clumbutcher139. Batman Arkham Shadow is a modern masterpiece. Does that mean the game is perfect? Abso-freaking-lutely not. But considering the circumstances and what kind of game we're dealing with, Arkham Shadow is just about as close to perfect as we can get. And I'm honestly amazed that we're living in a world where a game like this not only exists, but is actually worthy of being considered good, let alone fantastic. The best way to describe Arkham Shadow is, I want more. Because that's really what I said every time something new came up. I want more. I want more combat. I want more Predator. I want more exploration. I want more puzzles. I want more bosses. I want more story. I want more of Batman Arkham Shadow. And I promise that despite that sounding like I'm a big spoiled baby who didn't get enough game, this is a very good thing. Batman Arkham Shadow is the new Arkham Asylum. It's an incredibly ambitious game where it's clear that the team behind it wanted to do more than they or their system were capable of. But what they were capable of, and what we're ultimately left with, is still a marvel of modern game design that I believe the industry will be learning and stealing from for years, just like every other Arkham game to date. So real quick, before we get into this review, let's talk about the big thing stopping everyone watching this video from buying the game already. I know who you are. It's VR, and specifically MetaQuest 3 exclusive. I already know that every single comment, hate, praise, or otherwise, is gonna talk about how they wish it wasn't VR exclusive, that they should have made a regular old console game, that nobody's gonna buy this because of the exclusivity, yada yada yada, just shut up already. It's been 6 months and your complaints have been falling on deaf ears the whole time. Batman Arkham Shadow only exists as a VR game, and it will only ever exist as a VR game. A VR studio pitched this game to be made, not the other way around. This game was made with the sole intention of being a VR game. If you want a non-VR Batman title, you've got 4 masterpieces from over a decade ago just waiting to be played. The sole reason that Batman Arkham Shadow exists is to be the outlier. Its existence is based on the fact that it is a VR game, so everyone asking for it to not be the main thing that it was created to be are asking for something that's literally impossible. So please, I don't want to see it. I have heard your complaints for the last 6 months. I don't care. Play it, don't play it. Just stop complaining that it's VR exclusive, because that's literally what it's made to be. Sorry for the rant, I just really needed to get that off my chest. So, where were we? Batman Arkham Shadow is a love letter to every other Arkham game prior. This is a game that understands what made each entry of the series special, and takes all of those incredible aspects and molds them into one of the most incredible gaming experiences I've had in years. Arkham Shadow brings Arkham combat to life in a way that I don't think anyone thought possible. It is genuinely classic Arkham combat that happens to be in a VR headset. Say it with me now, it makes you feel like Batman. Because say it with me again, Batman doesn't walk up to people, he punches to them. Thank you, Ryan Darcy. It's amazing how this one small factor just makes everything click. You jump around the battlefield between enemies, just like Batman does in the classic games, but with an important spin on the combat that makes it more immersive than just randomly throwing your fists around like an idiot. You have directional indicators that require you to punch certain ways or specific places, keeping you on your toes and making sure your reactions are both fast and accurate. The best part is how well these moves flow together. Your attacks will never feel wrong, if that makes sense. If you punch toward a guy with your left hand, your follow-up attack will always be with your right. When you perform an uppercut, your next attack will have both of your arms going down. You'll never be in a situation where you're asked to do something unnatural, like swing the same fist twice in a row. You are always completely in control while fighting in Arkham Shadow. Just like I said in my initial review, you can swing your fists around like an idiot and you'll probably get through the encounters eventually, or you can put in the work to get into a real flow state and use special combo moves, the shock gloves, and even gadgets, all while you literally beat the crap out of these enemies. All of Batman's gadgets are somewhere on your person, and you can grab any of them at any time to use in combat. Your Batarang is the bat emblem on your chest, so you can quickly reach for it and throw it out to knock somebody over. The explosive gel has been upgraded to the gel launcher from Origin's Blackgate, which is always at your right hip and can be used to lay down a small trap and blow a bunch of enemies up with the right setup. The Bat Claw is attached to your grapple gun, which is built into your gauntlet, so just pressing a single button on the right controller will shoot it out and grab someone. And you literally have to pull back like Batman does to pull them towards you, then follow up with the right attacks to do Bat Claw slams. They even brought back special combo moves, and despite giving Batman a lot of them, they never got confusing. All of your special combo moves are tied to a single button. When you reach the appropriate combo count, a prompt comes up telling you it's time to activate. And when you press it, all enemies around you temporarily stop, and you're able to do one of 4 moves. If you go straight for an attack, you get the classic special combo takedown, which will instantly take down whatever enemy you attack. It's easy, it's reliable, and will probably be your go-to in most scenarios. They also brought back the Bat Swarm, which you can do by looking down and punching towards the ground, just like Batman does in City and Origins. This is even better than its other game counterparts because it has incredibly long range and stuns enemies for a long friggin' time. There's also the special combo Batarang and Bat Claw, which you get by using those respective gadgets while using a combo move. And as you'd expect, they're just more powerful versions of the gadgets you've already got, but they are just as fun as you'd expect them to be. And somehow, by some amazing miracle of game design, they made the shock gloves balanced. I couldn't believe it either when I first saw it, but they were able to do it. And it's because the shock gloves essentially take the place of free flow focus. You need to build your way up to a ×12 combo in order for the gloves to activate, with the caveat that you can't use special combo moves during that build-up. If you reach it, you'll have the gloves for the rest of the encounter, assuming you never miss or take a hit, of course. But the gloves only really have one purpose: doing more damage and keeping enemies stunned for longer. They can't break through shields and stun sticks, and won't allow you to automatically start a beatdown on armored guys. Their only purpose is powering up your regular punches a little bit, and allowing you to counter otherwise unblockable attacks, which is a nice bonus. But this small change makes them feel completely balanced compared to the version in Origins. You need to actually work to get them activated, and in a way, hinder yourself by denying the use of special combo moves. And while the end result is powerful, it's nowhere near as powerful as their original iteration in Origins, so I'm actually very happy with their inclusion. And all of that without talking about the base moveset that Batman has to deal with special enemy types. Counters are as simple as reaching out your fists to block incoming enemy attacks, and they set you up perfectly next to them to begin attacking them in return. Kinda taking a different spin on counters from the rest of the games, where you normally knock guys down just by doing them. Here, you need to actively retaliate to send them down. Since you literally have to grab your cape to glide in this game, you also have to literally grab your cape by one side to do a cape stun and initiate a beatdown. And just like back in the demo, this beatdown is just so satisfying. And since you can start and stop punching at any time, you can counter any incoming attacks whenever you need to. Rather than the classic dodge roll to avoid attacks, Batman does a smooth slide out of the way to keep your vision on the action. And in a similar vein, you can evade over enemies by jumping behind them, then strike down on them while they're still in the air. Aerial attacks also make a return, which you do the same way you do in classic Arkham. Stun them with the cape, then evade over them to attack. Blade dodges have actually taken an interesting twist, where you actually have to counter them at the start, then can initiate a dodge by literally dodging out of the way. And with the appropriate upgrade, you can instantly break the attacker's arm and knock them out with a blade dodge takedown. It is literally all here, and it all works. But that's not to say it's all easy. This game is a textbook example of easy to learn, hard to master. Like I keep saying, it can be as simple as wildly flinging your fists around and hoping you hit something. But if you want to play this game like a professional, you have to seriously lock in and get good. Utilize all of your moves to both keep your combo up, but also counter the more difficult enemies. Shields, stun sticks, and armor enemies have never been more dangerous than in Arkham Shadow, because of the simple fact that you can't always see them. With your vision being restricted to a first person, you have to be much more aware of your surroundings than you do in the classic third-person Arkham games. You can't just punch behind you and expect to always hit an unarmored enemy, because there could be a dangerous guy waiting back there to drop your combo. You have to always be on the lookout for what the game is going to throw at you, and be ready to adapt to them on the fly with the required moves. But despite that, it is very forgiving. Arkham Shadow gives you a much longer grace period to continue your combo than all the other games, because it knows that you need to take a moment to focus and suss out the best enemy to attack at any given time. Unlike the other games where you need to constantly be on the move, you can take a second to breathe in Arkham Shadow and you won't be punished for it, especially if you have the shock gloves active. And I think that really helps the otherwise really difficult combat encounters in the later game. That ideology is not quite applied to Predator, however. While combat in Arkham Shadow can be compared to Arkham City and Origins, Predator is much more comparable to Arkham Asylum. That is to say, your options are highly limited and you are much more likely to get caught out and killed. Enemies in Arkham Shadow are highly aware of your movements, even on lower difficulties. Even making the smallest sound will alert them to your presence and you'll get shot, meaning you need to take every single encounter as carefully as you can. Now, as far as the feeling of Predator is concerned, they friggin' nailed it. You genuinely feel like you could be found out at any moment as you're stalking the room from a gargoyle or patiently waiting in a grate. It's amazing. And the gadgets that you get support the overall design of these maps. You've got two variations of the Batarang, Multi and Sonic, which are actually built right into your base Batarang. You just cycle through whichever one you need for the moment and throw it out. It's a great touch that means we aren't constantly taking up more space on the utility belt. And similarly, smoke bombs are built right into the gauntlet, which means they're an easy grab and throw whenever you need them. But they're also the only gadget with a quick-fire variant. By pressing a button on your controller while under fire, Batman will just instantly drop it, which was a very nice touch. And the gel launcher works great in Predator 2, because you can use it while on gargoyles, assuming your target is within range. All of these additions are great. The only problem is the rest of Predator gameplay. This is definitely the one aspect of gameplay I feel they could have expanded on a good amount more without hampering the game. Because truth be told, it's the weakest aspect of the game. You only have a few takedown methods to work with, meaning the variety in these levels is severely lacking compared to combat. You've got the all-important silent takedown that is just as reliable as ever. You've got inverted takedowns, which got a serious range buff. Like, seriously, these guys can be nearly 20 feet away and you'll still be able to grab them. And you've got ground takedowns, which have been drastically changed from every other game. I neglected mentioning it in combat since I couldn't find anywhere else to talk about it, but ground takedowns have been simultaneously buffed and nerfed in Arkham Shadow. In this game, ground takedowns require you to smack an enemy in the face 5 times before finishing them off with one strong punch. The difference compared to the other games is that you can cancel this attack at any time, by either attacking or countering someone, or by simply dodging away. This is a massive buff to using them in combat, since it means you're no longer locked into this otherwise really powerful attack. However, it's much worse in Predator, because it means it takes so friggin' long to perform. And since Predator guys don't have regular health bars, instead requiring some kind of takedown to finish off, it means that landing a few of the punches, then dipping because you got seen, isn't really worth it. It makes glide kicks and batarangs kinda useless unless it's the final enemy, and there aren't nearly enough environment hazards in these Predator rooms to make use of. There's a few weak walls and occasional things you can power up with the shock gloves, but I feel like there just needs to be more. It definitely feels like they hard focused on gargoyles and grates above all else, without taking the rest of what makes Predator great into account. Don't get me wrong, it's fantastic from a feeling and atmosphere perspective. They really nailed the baseline of Arkham Predator, and I still do love what we ultimately got, but I definitely feel like they need another game to show what this system they created is really capable of. One thing I think should be addressed is that the trailers for this game were a little bit misleading. I and all the other guys who got to play the game early were under the impression that we'd be going to multiple places throughout Gotham for this game. And while that's technically the case, it's a lot less than we were expecting. Most of Arkham Shadow takes place in Blackgate, with only the prologue chapter and finale taking place outside. In other words, this is basically a spiritual successor to Arkham Origins Blackgate. But, actually an Arkham game and actually great. Chapter 1 is the only major time you spend in Gotham City, which, to be fair, is a very long chapter and so accounts for a very long time spent in Gotham. But it's also a very linear chapter, which means you don't really explore Gotham so much as run through it with a bunch of puzzles and combat encounters. The real meat of this game takes place in Blackgate, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. They were able to make the 3 major dungeons in Blackgate stand out from one another very well. Despite all being part of the same prison, each area was distinct in its own right, very similar to Arkham Asylum. In Arkham Shadow, you play through Maximum Security, Death Row, and the Arkham Ward, all of which have their own distinct feel to them. Max Security is your classic prison level, much like Arkham Asylum's intensive treatment. Death Row is a nice stroll down memory lane, as it's a beautiful recreation of the opening and closing level of Arkham Origins, with a bunch of new locations thrown in there for good measure. And the Arkham Ward is your gardens/doctor's offices, very similar to the botanical gardens from Asylum as well. So while these levels do all take place in the same general location, they put in the effort to make them not feel that way. But again, if you were expecting to visit a bunch of different locations across Gotham, you might want to lower your expectations a tad. One thing you shouldn't lower your expectations for, though, are the puzzles for the collectibles. This game has quite a lot of collectibles that Batman Arkham Videos is going to have a field day finding for all of us, even though I already got all of them, and almost every single one of them has a unique puzzle attached. And these puzzles are so freaking cool. Every single one of them is unique, introducing fun mechanics or something otherwise just cool to the table. My favorites, though, are the ones with the climbing mechanics. All over this game are climbable pipes, bricks, and monkey bars, and they introduced so many fun puzzles with these mechanics, or otherwise just fun explorable areas with them. They're another aspect that really adds to the immersion of Arkham Shadow. So, the big question that I'm sure is on all of your minds, is Joker in the game? I mean, we got Harley as a main character, so surely Mr. J should be here as well, right? Well, yes and no. I won't say exactly what he does, because I want you all to find that out for yourself. But I will tell you that Joker is indeed in this game. However, he is not a major player in the story at all. He does play an important part in the plot, but he is not the heavy hitter of the other games. It's pretty much what the fanbase claims they want him to be for once. A background character that's still important to the plot, but in no way overshadows the actual main villain. I'll just outright say it, since frankly this is less of a spoiler and more just a sigh of relief for some of you. He is not the Rat King, so take any worries you may have had about that away. Which, I guess, leads us to the other big question I'm sure all of you had going into this video. Whether or not I was right about the Rat King. Was my prediction correct, or was I wrong entirely and they were able to actually build up a solid twist reveal? I'm not going to say one way or the other if my prediction of Anarchy/Ratcatcher was right. And obviously I'm not going to reveal who the Rat King is because I want everyone to experience it for themselves if possible. What I will say is that my prediction about the problems they might run into was completely wrong. They were able to write the game in such a way that you are constantly guessing at possible suspects, and at the same time, nobody is ever truly cleared of suspicion. Harvey was right. The Rat King could truly be anywhere and anyone, and you feel like that's the case all the way until you confront him in the finale. And while I did have my personal suspect list narrowed down by the end, to the point that I was able to suss out his identity, I will say that they earned their big reveal in the end. They put in the work to make this reveal feel worthy of being a big reveal. Think of it like this. Compare the reveal to Jason being the Arkham Knight, where I knew it was him and just wasn't shocked at all. I knew who the Rat King was going to be, but I was still shocked when they actually did it. And that's the case for a lot of moments in this game. I generally knew where it was going, but was still shocked when that moment actually happened. They put in the work to make these moments worthy of the shock they were intended to deliver. Whether or not they actually shock you will be up to your own experience, and you're free to disagree with me. But unlike the Jason reveal, which was not at all earned in Arkham Knight, I believe the Rat King reveal was earned by the story they told throughout Arkham Shadow. Which, I guess, is a solid enough segue into the actual story section of this review. As you'd expect, the whole story is about trying to figure out who the Rat King is, at least as far as the A-plot is concerned. And like I said, it's a solid mystery that keeps you invested for the runtime. The game actually takes place over several days as we continuously build up to the Day of Wrath, which is the Rat King's ultimate plan for Gotham. And at the start of every day, we get these countdown screens telling us how soon the Day of Wrath is approaching, very much giving off vibes from the Protocol 10 countdown in Arkham City. Except where that was merely a background plot while Batman was kind of doing his own thing, this time it's front and center. You are constantly reminded about the Day of Wrath and see the days counting down, which for me personally, constantly put me on edge as it just felt like there wasn't enough time to stop it. Although by the end game, when the Day of Wrath actually comes, it definitely feels like we just beeline to it. While I do love the final chapter, I can also say that in some aspects it feels a bit rushed. A lot of stuff happens in a short period of time, as they need to wrap up a bunch of story arcs at once. And while they do ultimately wrap everything up in a nice little bow, I just feel like they could have taken a bit more time with a few of them. However, the more important aspect of the story that has yet to be highlighted in any promotional material is Batman's character arc. Since we're still dealing with a young and inexperienced Batman only 6 months after the events of Arkham Origins, he still has a lot to learn about being a hero. In the last game, he learned to lower his barriers and not take his allies for granted, starting with the much higher respect for Alfred and extending out to teaming up with Gordon for the first time, starting a long-running working relationship. This Batman continues into Arkham Shadow, as he's much more respectful to Alfred and has amassed the respect of many more people in Gotham, including the newly elected Commissioner Gordon, District Attorney Harvey Dent, and even a newcomer to the series, Dr. Leslie Tompkins. Yeah, newsflash, Leslie is in this game, and she's great. But most important is Barbara Gordon, now actively taking on the name Oracle, who he actually treats similarly to how he would back in Arkham Origins. But it actually makes sense, because Barbara is way too young and in over her head to be getting into this line of work. So Batman generally dismisses her until he realizes how valuable the work she's doing actually is, and eventually more formally invites her to the Bat family. But that's not Batman's big character arc in this game. That goes to his treatment of criminals. As we all know, Arkham Batman, and especially Arkham Origins Batman, is violent as all hell. He's perfectly fine dropping victims off a clock tower if it means he'll get what he wants. He doesn't see criminals as people, but as obstacles in the way of his pursuit of justice. However, that mentality changes throughout the game. Batman begins to learn that violence isn't always the answer to his problems, and maybe he should start introducing a bit of compassion for the people he's fighting. In that respect, turning him into the less violent, more compassionate Batman we expect him to be, like in the animated series. He begins getting a sense of what the criminals in Gotham are living like, and so begins to sympathize with them a lot more than he normally would. He's still gonna beat the crap out of everyone, don't get me mistaken, but he's also learning what it's going to take to be a better hero in the future, which I absolutely love to see. There's one character in particular that we see throughout the whole game that emphasizes this point very well, who plays a major role in the finale and is the catalyst in marking the end of Batman's character arc. Again, not gonna say who, but when you play the game, you'll know. One complaint I do have in the story department, however, was the underutilization of the new villains. The one I was most excited for, Lockup, was used the perfect amount. He's a great, imposing presence throughout the game that doesn't just go away after you kick his ass. Also, Earl Balin just does such a great job in all of his scenes. He's giving the perfect amount of hamming it up, but also playing it straight. I love it. However, the other two newbies are kinda thrown to the wayside. Ratcatcher is an important background figure who does a lot of work behind the scenes, but we don't get nearly enough screen time with him like we were expecting. I'm not gonna say it was disrespectful to his character, as, again, the scenes we got with him are all great, but it definitely feels like he could have been a bit more important to the story than he actually was. For the most part, he's kinda just there. You just talk with him. You don't have a fight with him, he doesn't really send goons after you or anything, he's just there. The same but also opposite goes for the ventriloquist. He plays absolutely no role in the main story. He's literally just there as a background character. But in this case, I'm kind of okay with it, because everything they did with him just felt right. At the start and end of every chapter, you get little glimpses into Arnold's cell to see how he's developing with his prototype Scarface, Woody. And each chapter he seems to be getting worse and worse. By the end, spoiler alert if you care, he ends up killing his cellmate, breaking out a Tommy gun, and Woody seems to have fully transformed into Scarface. I honestly kind of like that they kept him in the background and didn't feel the need to make him one of the big threats in the game. The story is already flooded with villains as is, so giving us another would have felt like a bit too much. Instead, giving us a background origin story for another villain, in a way possibly setting up for a future game, works a lot better to me. While I definitely would have liked to see more, because the ventriloquist is friggin' awesome, I can definitely understand leaving him out, as he didn't really serve the overall story. Ratcatcher though, I'm still a little confused by. I really think they could have used him a bit more without overstaying his welcome. Because again, the scenes we get with him are great, we just don't get enough of them. But that's kind of the case with a lot of characters in this game. Arkham Shadow has so freaking many cameos, it is not even funny. I would have loved any of these characters to play major parts in the plot, but honestly, restricting them to cameos was probably the right call. I won't list them all because, again, I want you to be surprised by some of them yourself. But to just list a few, we get to see Ricky Looselips again, though sadly don't get to interrogate him, Bronze Tiger from Origins Blackgate, Ferris Boyle from Cold Cold Heart, and even the man, the myth, the meme himself, Officer Frank Bowles. No, I am not joking. Officer Balls is really in Arkham Shadow as a Tiger Guard, and they don't even hide it either. He's just right there, front and center for everyone to start memeing. And that's just scratching the surface of cameos this game has. There's so many others, some of which are in plain sight, and others you gotta go out of your way to find. This game is an Easter egg hunter's wet dream with how much they put in here. I bet I still haven't found everybody, and I've already played the game twice. In terms of bosses, I will say that the game is lacking, at least when we're talking numbers. There are only 3 bosses in this game, by far the lowest of every game in the series. However, the 3 that we got were all completely original and honestly great. In that vein again, we turn to Arkham Asylum. Discounting Scarecrow and Killer Croc because those guys are more like encounters than boss fights, Arkham Asylum only had 3 unique bosses as well. The various Titans, Bane included, Poison Ivy, and Titan Joker. And all of those bosses are pretty mediocre at best to straight up bad at worst. Arkham Shadow doesn't have this problem. It had 3 overall solid bosses that show up at the right times in the story and don't overstay their welcome. Also, you'll notice I'm only showing footage from the lockup fight since he's the only one that was public knowledge, and I don't want to spoil what the other 2 are. But to give a hint as to how they worked, Imagine Titan Joker from Asylum and Nightmare Batman from Suicide Squad, but with actual well thought out mechanics and, good. If I were to throw them somewhere in my ranking list, I'd probably put each of them somewhere in the top 20, with the best one honestly making it to the top 10. They're that good. While I definitely would have liked a boss in the final chapter, I can understand their reasoning for not including one. Like Arkham Knight, this is a very story-driven finale, with much more emphasis on the characters and wrapping up their arcs than providing a crazy, spectacle-driven final encounter. Plus, it probably would have taken away from the other bosses in some way if they did, so I can understand leaving one out. Doesn't mean I can't be disappointed though. There's just one more thing I need to touch on that doesn't really fit in with the rest of these sections, so it's getting a little sidebar at the end. Something that hasn't been covered at all in promotional material is that we actually spend a lot of time in Batman Arkham Shadow as an alternate character. See, the reason most of this game takes place in Blackgate is because Batman pulled an Arkham City and intentionally got himself arrested. But not as Bruce Wayne. Say hello to Irving Matches Malone, your alias during the daytime. Now I know what you're all gonna say. I bought a Batman game to play as Batman. Why would I want to play as some random schmuck? Trust me, this is for the best. Matches here doesn't take up nearly as much screen time as I'm sure you're expecting. He's basically your daytime interlude in between your nightly excursions as Batman. Bruce uses Matches as a way to infiltrate the prison and get closer to criminals. This is where you end up doing a lot of detective work to get closer to the Rat King. Your suspect list doesn't just come out of nowhere, it comes from Matches' interactions with various inmates in Blackgate. So with that in mind, his sections are mostly story-based. But there's still breaks every now and again to give you the classic Batman gameplay you're yearning for. There's a few combat and even stealth sections that you play as Matches, and the only difference between him and Batman is that Matches doesn't have any gadgets. But all of his base movement is still there, so you still get the gameplay you want in between the story stuff. I personally think it works really well, because it gives you a much needed break from all the action to just slow down and talk to people for a change. But never really for too long, as you'll be right back to it before you know it. Because that's the important thing, these sections are never all that long. In a casual setting, watching cutscenes and listening to all the dialogue, they'll probably last 20 minutes at most. But if you want to just get back to the gameplay as soon as possible and skip all that, it'll probably only take about 5 minutes, as most of it is running around the prison yard to do errands for people. They never overstay their welcome, and the few longer sections that ultimately take up much more screen time are worth it because of how heavy on the story they are. The final section in Chapter 5 with Matches is by far the longest, but is also arguably the best because of how well done the story with it is. I was never angry or disappointed to be going back to Matches and away from Batman, because I knew I was never too far away from being back to Batman, or that I was about to get a really important story beat that would majorly impact the story. Matches is kinda integral in making Batman's character arc actually function. Without his sections, I don't think Bruce would have had his great character arc. Taking any of Matches out of Batman Arkham Shadow would be similar to taking the Alfred confrontation scene out of Arkham Origins. The game and story can still function, but it would ultimately fail to land the message behind its character's arc in the end. Alright, small complaints time so that y'all know I'm being completely fair to the game. I can do this. There's still quite a few glitches throughout the game, but I also played a slightly older version, meaning most of them have probably been patched out by the time the full release goes out. It's also nowhere near as glitchy as the previous version I played that would crash like every 30 minutes and was constantly lagging. This version barely lags, and I'm pretty sure only occasionally did because I was recording through the headset, and I only had one crash. This game is very well optimized, all things considered, but I know some graphics glazers are going to go crazy at the fact that Arkham Shadow is at a constant 2000 FPS and 12K resolution, so please kindly shut up and accept that this is a big freaking game on a relatively underpowered console. Please and thank you. It's not always going to perform at its peak, but it doesn't detract away from the experience. Let's see, what else? The map is pretty shit. Like, honestly, look at this and tell me you understand how to navigate it. I've played the game for over 20 hours and I still don't understand it half the time. I have been told that they're working on potentially updating it, so it might look different on the final release, but just know that this is what it looked like before. You're better off just relying on your memory and instincts to navigate Blackgate than this thing. What else? I'm a little disappointed that we only go through each area of the game once. They built it up to be a bit more like Asylum, where you'd get a new gadget in each major area, then need to return to a previous area and unlock a lot more to explore. While this is the case for some collectibles, that's it. You only visit each area once in the main story, which was a little bit disappointing. And on the note of collecting gadgets, I was pretty disappointed at how late you acquire the Backclaw. It's literally the final gadget you get in the game, which you get halfway through Chapter 4. Of 5, by the way. I know this game was designed around not having it, but it was really disappointing because of how fun it is to use. It's by far the most fun gadget to use in combat, and you only get it for a few sections at the very end of the game. Plus, challenge maps, sure. And last thing, the finale was a little bit lacking gameplay-wise. There's only a single combat and single predator section in Chapter 5, which is a little bit odd, but I'd say it's more than made up for by the story beats, so I'm okay to ignore it. Okay, quick final section to go over the other little things that don't really have a segue. The graphics are gorgeous. Again, everybody complaining, please shut up. The video you're watching doesn't do the look justice. It looks at least 10 times better when you're actually in the headset. The environments and character models are all so well done. You can see so much detail that was put into every single aspect of the art department. So, for the love of God, stop dismissing the game because it doesn't look good. You're not in the headset. Everyone in the voice cast is giving it their all and doing such a damn good job. I already praised Earl Balin for his portrayal of Bolton, but I also gotta give props to Dwight Schultz for the ventriloquist and Woody for playing such a meek and unassuming character about to go on a rampage, and Carrie Payton for playing such a smooth-talking yet still creepy and intimidating rat catcher.
No! Abusing prisoners! This is Woody. We're best friends. Friends? We just met, Four Eyes, and you're far too clingy for me.
Bruce Wayne hoards billions. More money than he'd be able to spend in 100 lifetimes. Meanwhile, we starve. We live on the streets. Ignored, invisible, yet greater in number every day.
They're all fantastic. Martin Jarvis is still killing it as Alfred, who we always love and appreciate with all of our hearts because he is the GOAT.
Master Bruce, it is good to see you. I was beginning to worry.
Just worry, Alfred?
I might have had the Batwing on standby, and a plan to trigger a prison evacuation.
Tara Strong is honestly a lot less annoying and far more endearing in this game as Dr. Quinzel than she was in Suicide Squad. She acts as a voice of reason in this story, and to my surprise, her performance actually backs that up.
You'll have to excuse Dr. Crane. He was brought in to replace the outgoing supervisor, Professor Strange, and, well, he has a very narrow view of therapy.
This is in comparison to Dr. Crane, who, and this is gonna blow a lot of your minds, they somehow got Elijah Wood to play. And yes, he does just as amazing a job as you'd expect.
Umbra Records updated. Access granted, you handsome devil.
Continuing the tradition of having a new voice for Gordon in every game, Mark Rolston is amazing as the new commissioner.
We know they're well organized, but we know almost nothing about who's behind it.
It could just be recency bias talking, but this might be my favorite voice for Gordon in the saga. I'm gonna need a bit more time to mull it over, but if anything, that just speaks to the performance.
We've sent a large number of offenders to Blackgate Prison already, with more being processed as we speak.
Troy Baker is... come on, he's Troy friggin' Baker. He's physically incapable of not killing it.
After Falcone, I worried this would be a one-time thing, but look at us. Just like before.
And of course, the man we were all hyped to see come back, Roger Craig Smith, gives the performance of a lifetime. I've said it many times, if there were ever an actor to replace Kevin Conroy as Batman, I'd want it to be Roger. And this game just further proves my point. I'm so glad he's back.
Tonight they played the wrong game.
Especially since he gives 4 different performances throughout the game, playing Batman,
Tiger trusted their braces so well they left the doors unlocked.
Bruce Wayne,
Fine. Alright, Leslie.
Matches,
Alright. Gather intel, find the rats, and see what they know about the Rat King.
and one that's a spoiler, all of which have completely different tones of voice, but which he always plays perfectly.
This friggin' thing again.
Honestly, half the time when he switches, I can't even tell it's the same guy. He's that good.
What's in Blackgate? The Rat King?
Salvation.
I'm not putting you in Blackgate.
And of course, props to everyone else I didn't already mention. You all did amazing in this game. We've got fantastic detective sequences where you actually have to deduce the answer to the crime scene, rather than letting Batman figure out the answer to himself. I will say they aren't quite as good as the ones from Arkham Origins because there's no scrolling through footage to find the answers, it's all just scanning in the evidence. I would have liked needing to watch through and find a missing clue, but I can also potentially see it being too ambitious. Still, I'm glad they're here. For some reason, there's a shop while playing as matches where you can buy decorations for your cell. I don't know why Bruce would bother taking time to decorate his very temporary cell, but it's a cool detail that I'm sure some people are going to be excited for. You know, it's just fun to have. Challenge maps are, as you'd expect, a lot of fun. It's great to just have easy access to some combat and predator maps. Though, as I'm sure you'd expect me to say, I want there to be more. Only 3 of each is painfully low, but we've been told that this will be their main focus of post-launch DLC, so expect a lot more in the future. This game is honestly really funny at times, and never in a distracting way. They just occasionally tell a few jokes here and there that are able to get a chuckle out of me. Batman himself is very unintentionally funny throughout the whole game. He delivers basically every line so bluntly and dry that in some scenarios it's just unintentionally hilarious. He's a lot like Kratos from the new God of War, where he isn't trying to be funny, but the scenario he's talking in just happens to make his response so hilarious.
No.
All to catch the one guy who could lead us straight to the Rat King tonight. And you tell me to go home?
Yes.
Meanwhile, Alfred just has all the dad jokes.
Now you'll literally have some pull around here.
I love it. We do indeed get fantastic interrogations where we're right up in our enemy's face and actively punch them to make them talk. It's glorious. And of course, I've got to talk about the music. My God. Kazuma Janauchi, I hope I pronounced that right, absolutely cooked with this soundtrack. Perfectly emulating that classic Arkham feel from Nick Arundel's music, but putting his own spin on it to create something truly his own. It's all so freaking good. This review is only scratching the surface of what Batman Arkham Shadow has to offer. This is a game that you need to experience for yourself, as just watching a playthrough simply won't suffice. There are moments that won't feel the same just watching them unfold on a screen, that you have to experience firsthand to understand how amazing they are. This is a game that is pushing the boundaries of what its medium is capable of, and proving why virtual reality is more than just a gimmick. It's a genuine, honest-to-goodness, legitimate medium that people in the gaming industry need to be taking greater advantage of. I know the barrier to entry is going to be high for a lot of people. $300 is a lot to fork over, but I assure you that it will be worth every penny. I desperately hope that this isn't the last we're going to see of Camouflage Studios. They've created a game that I am not afraid to call a modern masterpiece. Again, does that mean the game is perfect? Absolutely not. But would you call Arkham Asylum perfect? Again, big fat no. but we all agree that Arkham Asylum is still a masterpiece because of the renaissance of superhero games it introduced. And I genuinely believe and hope that we will be seeing that again with Batman Arkham Shadow. I talked with the team so much during my trips to their studio, and it's clear how passionate they are about Batman and especially the Arkham series. They wholeheartedly deserve to do a city-like sequel that takes everything they did with Batman Arkham Shadow and just do more and do it better. Is Batman Arkham Shadow the best Arkham game? Probably not. Is it even the best video game that I've played on this channel? I doubt it. Do I think it'll win Game of the Year at the Game Awards? Hell no, but if it doesn't at least win Best VR Game, we are gonna have a serious problem on our hands and fists are gonna be thrown. But because of how big a milestone I can see this game being for the future of the industry, and because of what it was able to accomplish, bringing one of the most beloved series of all time to a new medium, I believe it's only right to give this game my channel's first 10 out of 10. It is truly a game that you need to experience yourself to understand why. And with that in mind, please do all the YouTube stuff, because I'm about to go 100% this game for the second time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later, chaps.